Conference
is resilient. We have a very solid foundation for future growth. But, as I've said on many occasions, future growth must be earned, and these national accounts prove that our economic action strategy is absolutely right. Real gross domestic product increased by 1.1% in the March quarter and 3.5% over the year. The detailed numbers show that the expected transition away from mining, investment and construction towards other drivers of growth is underway. And this is an important indicator that the rest of the economy, the non-mining side of the economy, is starting to lift. And that's encouraging. Our budget growth package will greatly assist this transition. There is no doubt that Australia relies heavily on the strength of our mining exports. Export volumes increased in the March quarter by the highest percentage since September 2000. As a result, we have the smallest current account deficit as a share of GDP since I was 14 years of age, back in March of 1980. Household spending is also up, with a stable saving ratio. The gains in income are flowing through to reasonable levels of consumption growth, although recent consumer confidence data has been volatile. It's not much different to similar post-budget outcomes. And I caution that month-to-month data is more noise than signal. Construction of houses is picking up, and leading indicators suggest this sector will continue to strengthen in the months ahead. And this is hugely important for small business people involved in the building industry, like plumbers and electricians and brickies. There is a gathering strong momentum. Business investment outside the mining sector is showing tentative signs of life, but we're still waiting for a more sustained recovery here. Again, our budget is designed to build momentum. Productivity growth is solidly positive, and this is something which we need to continue to focus on if Australia is to maintain and potentially grow our quality of life. So overall, these results suggest the budget forecast of real economic growth of 2.75% in 2013-14 is on track. Don't forget, this quarter of data covers the first 3 months of the year, when on the back of decisions by the government in relation to the car industry, Qantas and SPC Ardmona, our political opponents were warning of the end of times and significant job losses. Well, this is a strong economic result on the back of 106,000 new jobs being created in the economy over the first 4 months of this year, including 79,000 new full-time jobs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Australia continues to face challenges from the winding down of mining investment, falling commodity prices and the ageing of the population, but we can be cautiously optimistic that the necessary economic adjustments are beginning to take place. However, we cannot rest in our efforts to drive growth and jobs. So our budget delivers on our economic action strategy, and it's important that we get the chance to implement that strategy in full. Questions here?
Does this affect your budget forecast? It's got 3.5%. That's a lot stronger than you're forecasting by the end of the financial year. Does it have a flow-on effect to the budget?
Well, look, there are other factors at play. For example, iron ore prices are currently well down on what we're expecting in the budget. It is also the case that this is a very strong quarter, but it's not the full year. Now, to get to 2.75% growth, which is what we were forecasting for the current year, we need to have a print of about 0.5 in the final quarter, and look, we'll wait and see what happens. But you don't get ahead of yourself in this regard. Our numbers, our forecasts are exactly right in the budget. They're exactly right, and we've been proven to be right.
Treasurer, do you think, given so much of this has been driven by net exports and mining activity, whether
the general public has felt that improvement that took place in the start of the year in the general economy?
Well, I think that if you look at the jobs data, it's extremely positive. I mean, Bill Shorten was warning of Armageddon in Question Time. Have a look at what he actually said. He was warning of the end of times with various job losses in manufacturing and other parts of the economy. And in fact, 106,000 new jobs have been created in those 4 months that he warned of the end of times. 79,000 full-time jobs in just 4 months. So, look, these are positive numbers. They're a strong, robust foundation for growth, but future growth must be earned. Must be earned. And that's why our budget strategy is on track. It is exactly what we said.
This is better than expected figures. Does this now debunk the government's claim that there is a budget emergency, a budget crisis?
Well, not at all. Not at all. It won't necessarily flow through to revenues, and particularly given where iron ore prices are at, and there is wage growth is very flat, and frankly, we've written down more than $40 billion in revenue since the pre-election fiscal outlook. Now, $37 billion was between the pre-election fiscal outlook and MyEFO, and because our budget forecasts are not much different to MyEFO in that regard, it proves absolutely right that when we delivered the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook to you, December last year, we were showing the real state of the books. And the real state of the books is reflected in the fact that the budget numbers in terms of revenue haven't been much different. Michelle.
But you also were showing your own decisions in that period, so it's not quite right to say you were showing...
Well, we had to put money into the Reserve Bank. I mean, no one's disputing that. We had to put money into the ACCC. So many of the previous government's programs actually came to a standstill because they actually didn't put any further money in the budget. And of course, the big one was that over the medium term, they claimed that they were going to have just 2% growth in expenditure, whereas in fact they embedded 3.7% growth in expenditure. Now, all the decisions we made in the budget, which the opposition is now crying about, only get growth in expenditure from 3.7 down to 2.7. We still don't get to their 2% growth that Labor said was the basis upon which they get to surplus. So, please, they completely misled the Australian people about the state of the budget.
People crying. Do you have a response to Campbell Newman's budget attacks on the federal government?
Well, Queensland has done substantially better out of this budget over the next 4 years than even they were expecting. For example, just before the election, the Labor Party took money out of the budget for Gonski in Queensland. And now we've put in over $790 million into additional funding for Queensland in that regard. So, you know, it's easy to blame Canberra when you're a Premier in Queensland.
Treasurer, the mining industry, which is less than 20% of the economy, was responsible, according to the ABS, for 80% of the growth, which suggests that the rest of the 90% of the economy produced less than 20%.
Yeah.
Does that suggest to you that the rest of the economy is underperforming and that we have a problem with the rest of the economy?
Well, we've given you some great charts, which I understand previous treasurers love their charts, but I'm only going to refer them. You know, growth has been driven unquestionably by net exports, but what we found over this March quarter, it's an extraordinary quarter in March when you don't have cyclones, particularly in Western Australia affecting Port Hedland. So our miners are exporting their socks off, and thank God, because it's having an impact, a positive impact on our economy. But one swallow doesn't make a summer, and the fact is that because we didn't have cyclones in this March quarter, they dug deep into their inventories, and as you can see, inventory detracted from the gross national expenditure in this quarter, with a net result that I'm hoping that inventories will build again in the next quarter. But You know, there are green shoots in the non-mining side of the economy. I mean, the investment in housing construction is very positive. Even though approvals have come off a relatively high base, construction is very positive in housing. And I'm pretty confident we're going to start to see new business investment outside of mining. So, yeah.
You've alluded to consumer confidence. It's not really where it should be at on the long term. Do you think that the sort of hit to sentiment that we've seen in the last, let's say, 4, 5, 6 weeks is going to last? Is that
No.
a temporary effect? Or?
No, I don't see it as lasting. I think we've got very solid foundations. And, you know, previously when there have been other budgets, you've seen some impact on consumer confidence, monthly data. As I said, monthly data is often noise and not a signal. You know, if you look after the May 1995 budget, there was a drop. 2006 budget, 2010 budget, you can see drops in consumer confidence. But the bottom line is the best ingredient to redress a shortfall in consumer confidence is to have job growth. And over 100,000 new jobs in the first 4 months of this year is the best thing we can do to rebuild consumer confidence.
Treasurer, you said at the outset that the government should be allowed to implement its budget measures, but it looks increasingly likely that more than half of the savings that you are hoping to book over the next 4-year forward estimates aren't going to be approved by the council.
Well, I will say emphatically to our political opponents, if you want to hurt the Australian economy, oppose our budget. If you want to help the Australian economy, pass our budget. If you care about jobs, pass our budget. If you care about future prosperity, pass this budget. These are very good figures for the March quarter. We're not getting overly excited about them. They're good figures, they're strong foundations, but future growth and future jobs come from the actions today. And that's why our budget is exactly right. Anything else?
Do you know,
Yep. Sorry, the gentleman here. Oh, sorry, Michelle.
What measures do you expect will be dealt with before June 30 before the Senate changes of your major budget measures?
Well, obviously the tax initiatives are going to be dealt with, but we also expect the government, we also expect the opposition to pass our changes to the mining tax and the carbon tax. I mean, they're complete hypocrites on these things. Bill Shorten, before June 30, we're putting them up, and the fact is we're ready to put them up. We're putting up the carbon tax. Carbon tax is going up at the end of this, at the beginning of July, so you'd expect them to pass that to prevent an increase in the cost of electricity. Okay, last one.
Will you be revising your expectations for the unemployment rate now?
No. Our numbers are right. Our forecasts are right in relation to unemployment, but I just say this. We inherited unemployment going up to 6.25%. I am cautiously optimistic that we won't get there, but we've got much work to do and our budget is a key part of that. Thanks very much.